we've met a bit in the past, and I've been a long admirer of your leadership of South Africa, and now your leadership of the G20.
Yes.
And the world is very much in your hands at a crucial time. And if I may say, from a Canadian perspective, the strength of the ties between our country are great, including down to the level of assistance in natural disasters. And
thank you for the continued wonderful bilateral relations between Canada and South Africa. We've had a long relationship, and we're very proud of the way that we deal with each other. We support you with fires, you support us with investments, and you've supported our just energy transition, and we're really delighted. So our relations are strong, and we're particularly pleased to be here.
All right, for more, we speak to our US correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who is monitoring developments at the G7 and the latest reaction to developments in the Middle East for us. Sherwin, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. So certainly a warm welcome and exchange between G7 host Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Ramaphosa. What are the key focus areas for this gathering?
And let's not undercut, Tunati, the warmth you saw there between the G7 president and the G20 president, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and Prime Minister Mark Carney. Who are these two individuals? Two individuals that have a similar experience in recent months in dealing with the United States, both enjoying an audience at the White House with President Trump and being on the receiving end of a lot of criticism, certainly from the US perspective. And so certainly displaying there for the world to see a warmth that perhaps was lacking in those Oval Office meetings, and certainly perhaps to send a message there that this is what cooperation looks like. And certainly from the South African perspective, as G20 President Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, they're saying that they're here to learn from Canada as the G20 presidency seeks to align itself with some of the G7 objectives. And let me just go through a few of those, Unati. Essentially three main themes: protecting our communities in the world, some subsections there, promoting international peace and security, of course, a big topic. If you look at the situation in the Middle East, if you look at what's going on in Gaza, Israel, Iran, Ukraine, Sudan, and the list goes on. Then under building energy security and accelerating the digital transition, also very closely aligned with G20 themes here. A big focus of President Ramaphosa's visit there to the G7 is on energy sustainability and predictability moving forward. So aligning very much in terms of fortifying critical mineral supply chains, which is a subheading under that category. And of course, mineral supply chains, be that via China, be that via various mineral-rich countries like South Africa, a key peg in terms of economic growth, the future, artificial intelligence and the like. So very much an important discussion there. And then, of course, under the third theme, securing the partnerships of the future to attract private investment, to build infrastructure for the future, creating high-paying jobs for our citizens, open, dynamic global markets where businesses can compete and succeed. These are very key areas for a country like South Africa that is seeking to tackle its infrastructure deficits, be that through logistics, when you think of Transnet, trade and the expansion of trade within the African context, and of course also bringing down high stubborn unemployment in South Africa above 30%. So very important alignments to be seen, certainly between the G20's perspective and the G7, but also a country like South Africa aligning itself with certainly the prescripts and objectives of what this G7 meeting will focus on.
Yeah, speaking of key focus areas, Sherwin, President Ramaphosa last week previewed various bilaterals with, among others, the new German Chancellor, and now a second meeting in a matter of weeks expected with President Donald Trump. What are the expectations around that?
Yeah, President Ramaphosa talking about meeting Mark Carney. We can cross that off the list. That happened yesterday. And so our expectations are that he will meet with Friedrich Merz, the new German Chancellor, of course, one of the largest economies in Europe. But also he talked about a second meeting within a matter of 3 weeks with President Donald Trump. And you'll know that, of course, addressing the genocide claims seem to have now been tempered down by the US. You haven't heard that kind of rhetoric emanating from the White House, and certainly from senior officials within the administration since that meeting. So there seems to be progress in the relationship. But the South Africans are very laser focused on this new trade and investment framework, which was introduced at that after the Oval Office meeting behind closed doors at the White House, in the main by Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Stow. So the question is, how are the South Africans and the United States going to move this relationship forward? We are still, of course, waiting for South Africa to appoint a new ambassador to Washington, D.C. But I think the indications are, if you were to read the tea leaves, a meeting so soon after that Oval Office meeting portends well for the future relationship here between Washington and Pretoria. And of course, the big get for South Africa will be a firm confirmation from President Trump that he will be attending the G20 Leaders Summit later this year in South Africa. But let's also not underestimate the broader discussion here with the United States in the room, be that the G7 or the outreach section of this G7 component. It's the question of United States unilateral action on tariffs. Tariffs are a huge impediment to the global consensus around economic growth. And if you just look at what EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said on her arrival in Kananaskis yesterday, she said, "Let us keep trade between us fair, predictable and open. All of us need to prevent protectionist measures. This is an important message that the G7 can send to world markets." And so a lot of focus will be on Donald Trump's posture here as it relates to tariffs in the world economy.
Sherwin, of course, you're also monitoring the Middle East, but unfortunately, we have to leave it there for now.